Hello and welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It's the Friday Bulletin. My name is Laura Bradburn. I have in fact moved from this spot since last night. I went to bed, I had something to eat, had the shower, all that stuff, just in case anybody's in any doubt. But I was on the match coverage last night with Paul John and the pre-match with Colin, where we obviously reacted to the Bayer Leverkusen result in the Europa League last night. I will get my two fellow contributors' thoughts on that in due course. But first of all, let me introduce Tony Haggerty. How you doing, Tony?
I'm very well, Laura. Yourself?
Not too bad. End of another week. A big week in Celtic, but when isn't it a big week for Celtic these days anyway? But we'll get to all of that a little bit later. You might think to yourself, watching Jim's looking a little bit different today. He unfortunately couldn't join us because of the time difference that you're noticing, but somebody located in Australia could join us. Jared from Celtic Down Under. How you doing, Jared?
I'm good, Laura.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, and obviously for everybody watching at the moment, you'll notice that we've started at 10:30 rather than our usual 12:30 slot, and that is in honour of obviously Lisbon Lion great Bertie Auld, who will be laid to rest later today in a mass at St Mary's in Calton, followed by a cortege past his beloved Celtic Park. So in honour of the wee man and to give him the appropriate respect, we thought it was appropriate not to air at the same time as that service. And what better time to honour him and go live than 10:30 for 10:30. Obviously not the case for Jared, but there you go. We do what we can. But we'll leave that and we'll get into it as we always do. Tony, I'll come to you first. Your overall thoughts on the game last night? It was a bit of a, as you like to say, a rip-roaring one. It was end to end. There was goals galore. What did you make of it?
A bit of a mixed bag, wasn't it? You know, we started poorly, recovered brilliantly, ended poorly. You know, but for long spells in that game, they went toe-to-toe with a team who are regarded as one of the favourites for that. Myself and Jared were speaking off air, and we said that they're a Champions League quality team. Can't deny that. They're riding high in the Bundesliga, and Celtic ran them close. You know, if you'd have said that 5 months ago, people would have laughed at you. Said you go to Germany and you're 8 minutes away from winning on German soil for the first time. You know, and I see a lot of negativity about the substitutes, game management, all that kind of stuff. But I'm being more positive about last night. The substitutes, in my opinion, and we're banged on about this, and so has the manager, they just lack the quality of the players that they're replacing. And until Celtic are in a position to have real competition for places and replace like for like, then this is what's going to happen until Ange has what he would deem a settled squad. You know, the subs cost Celtic the game in terms of the fact that when they were brought on to do a job, they didn't affect the game in the way that the ones that went off did. You know, you can't legislate for that fact that guys that come on are inferior quality and do not carry out the manager's instructions. You know, these guys are meant to take the ball up the park, create openings, you know, and Jared will maybe be able to enlighten us a bit more, but on why the substitutions are made, I can understand it. You know, it makes sense to bring on fresh legs, possibly chase a third, kill the game. And there were moments in that game where you thought Celtic were going to get a third. Sorry, and the guys up top had burst their hump and were knackered and were shattered. You know, potent game on Sunday as well. So all these things come into play. Yeah, go back to it. Defensive deficiencies, but we've spoken about that since the start of the season. That Ange needs another window to get in better quality defenders, possibly better quality midfielders as well, and another striker, because, well, we saw from Ajetti's cameo that he ain't going to cut it. Possibly Mikey Johnson's not going to cut it either. But, you know, I thought there was lots to be positive about last night. You know, in the Greats were very, very unlucky. And in Joe Hart, we have a goalkeeper that's just astonishing. That double save was incredible, and we'll probably get to that. But, you know, a lot of negativity kicking around the social media sphere, Twitter sphere and Facebook, and I can see what Ange's trying to do. For one of the first times, you can see what they're trying to build, and and with a few more additions and being backed in the window and being continued to be backed, this will fall Celtic's way one day in Europe away from home. They've gone to Spain and Germany and scored 5. Granted, they've come away with nothing, but you now trust this team to go away from home and score. It's keeping the back door shut that's been my problem. They've conceded the highest goals in the Europa League, so that tells its own story. They're now in the Conference League. Fair enough, but guaranteed Europe after Christmas. You'd have taken that at the start of the season as well. So I say a real mixed bag, but I was happy enough with the performance, but bitterly disappointed with the result.
Yeah, it was a bit of disappointment, as these sucker punches of an 86-minute goal always are, but we'll break down a little bit more of the match as we go on. Just before I come to Jared, DK on YouTube, thanks for commenting, and remember everybody, you can comment on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, wherever you're watching. DK says, Ange in post-match press conference acknowledged that the subs cost us the game. Ange just can't trust McCarthy, Ajeti, MJ and Abada. It's certainly looking that way, but I mean, if Ange is anything, he's honest, and I don't think anybody with an honest bone in their body could look at the substitutions last night and say they were the right decision, or that they were certainly not the reason that we crumbled at the end. Jared, I'll get your thoughts on the game specifically maybe a little bit later, but I'm interested, just because it's been a while since I've spoken to you. Obviously had you on the show a number of months ago when we were going through a bit more of a rocky patch with Ange. I was interested to get your thoughts on, being somebody who knows the way that Ange works and how he strips teams apart and rebuilds them. Are things going according to the kind of Ange timeline for you of what you've seen elsewhere, or is it taking a little bit longer to come together? What's your thoughts on that?
It's actually going quicker than I expected. Usually it's takes about the first season is a full knockdown rebuild sort of thing. He's done that in 5 months. So where the team's at now, and some of the play we're seeing and the way it's starting to build up, that's the way I'd normally have seen his teams at the end of towards the end of his first season. So I think he's probably a good 4 or 5 months ahead of schedule.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be that way, and still a little bit of work to do. I'll ask you the same as I asked Tony. Like, what was your thoughts on the game last night overall? Just an overarching kind of view of how it went for you.
Tony covered most of what I was going to say. He's going on, thinking, oh sweet, he's leaving something for me. He's leaving me the Joe Hart bit, and then he just dropped that in there. And I'm like,
sorry, mate.
Tony, you're wrecking me. I got nothing new to say. No, it was so yeah, the crux of the game. Yeah, Tony's covered that. There's not much more to add to it, but something you said, Laura, about the subs that we made, like that they weren't the right subs to make. I actually think they were for the way Ange plays. Like if you're away from home against a higher quality team, most people would say park the bus, do a Livingston, do a St. Johnson, park the bus, load up the box, and just ride it out, right? And I knew that was never going to happen. And as soon as I saw those subs happen with Jota's off, Forrest off, Furuhashi's off, that sort of stuff happening, I'm like, yeah, he's probably looking at going, I know they've got goals in them. We've ridden our luck a bit. There's been some saves. They've hit the post. Let's try and get another one. So it's a 2-goal margin, because then that's going to be easier, because we had to get that win, let's be honest, to try and stay in Europa League. So I can understand it's like a poker player going, here's my chips, I'm going all in. That's pretty much what those subs were to me. And that's Ange for you in a nutshell. He'd rather attack and ride his luck, and unfortunately it didn't happen.
It's an interesting point. I guess I guess my like sort of objections to the substitutions were made was as much about the players themselves rather than the choices. I can understand the logic behind freshening things up front and trying to get an extra goal just to kill off the match. But when you're replacing a fit and on fire Jota with Mikey Johnston, you're already up against something when you're replacing Kyogo, who, even though he wasn't as much of a goal threat last night, certainly works a lot harder than a Jetty. When you're replacing him with him, it's a difficult one as well. So I take on board your point about the logic of the substitutions. It's the personnel that is the problem.
Can I just throw the flip side at you there, Laura, quickly?
Yeah.
Looking at the team list, okay, if we're going to throw on defenders and try and, park the bus, our bench, Scales, you're a Giddy, Shaw, Murray, Montgomery. They're your defenders on the bench. Really, who are you going to put on? So,
well, I mean, we did.
It's not like Julian's on the bench or anything, is it?
Yeah, no, we did have a discussion about that in the pre-match, myself and Colin last night. We were kind of concerned that, we actually were talking about it from the point of view of if the game was needing something extra, if it was in the balance and we needed something extra, who would we bring on? We didn't think the attacking choices, but yeah, the defensive choices are not up to scratch either. And Tony, this brings us all back to the same thing. The one thing Celtic fans are asking for, and last night was that in a microcosm, is back the manager in January. He's already shown he can eye a player. His signings have been successful, some a lot more successful pound for pound than other managers we've had in the past. Surely the board must be looking at something like last night and saying, give us a list and we'll go after who we can get.
This was a manager that told you he wanted to measure himself against the best. So he went for it against Bayer Leverkusen last night. Talk about fine margins and measurements. Celtic were that close, with a team really that has no right to go to the Bayer Arena and play like that. With a team containing the likes of Beaton, and substitutes like Mikey Johnson, Albin Ayeti coming on. And it's no disrespect to those players. But, all being well, if a manager gets back, they don't feature in the team. It could be others there that might not feature in the team as well. So you have to back the manager. You have to back his judgment. He will play no other way. He said it. I was critical of him at the start of the season because I wanted them to win football matches. The guy tried to win a football match last night. He tried to win an important football match last night, and now we'll get fans who are upset at that now. Telling it's lack of game management, but we all know about the lack of personnel. We've been banging on about it since the start of the window. So's the manager. Now, if you back this manager and he brings in the players that he wants, you will see more progress. More progress moving forward. Celtic got beat 4-0 against Bayer Leverkusen at home. We touched on it as well. Progress has already been made. So, what's it to be? I think it's just an overwhelming sense of frustration about last night because they were so close. And I get back to it. That team shouldn't be competing like that against a German team like that. Favourites for the tournament, a Champions League team in all but name. But they did. Because the manager's tactics, as Jared will tell you, is to not go gung-ho, but to try and win football matches playing attacking football. So, what do you want here? I was critical, as I said, of him at the start. I just wanted him to win football matches. But if there's a way of losing, Jared will say this as well. That was an Ange way of losing, wasn't it, Jared?
Absolutely.
That was an Ange way to go down fighting, measure yourself against the best. And my goodness, they get a couple of right good shots in, or a couple of good hooks in if you're a boxer, and on another day the decision could have gone their way, so that's where we're at. Work in progress, trust the manager, trust the process, all that kind of stuff. Have faith in the manager, have faith in his judgment, because he does know a player when he sees one, and he knows, and he was possibly making the point with the bench last night that we could have won that game had we had better players. Better personnel will make us win that game. And if he turns around and says we lost the game because of the subs, it's maybe a wee warning shot over the bow to say to the board, listen, we can now go to these places and compete, but we can do more than compete the next time. If you arm me to the teeth, I'll bring in him, and him, and we'll take it from there. Because he's already said anything negative, anything bad's on him. So he takes the rap for everything. He'll take the rap for the substitutions last night and the negativity that's coming his way about the failure of game management. That's fine. He'll take all that. But he'll also turn around and say, well, do you know what? Here's a counter to that. If in January you allow me to bring in X, Y, Z, then, we'll take it from there. We can go again, type thing, So I'm, a lot of people probably don't see this in me because I get called I'm quite a negative character at things, but I was pretty enthused last night. For the first time in a long time, I thought, you know what? I can see a long-term strategy here. I can see some kind of plan. As I say, gutted to lose so late, but you know what? How could you not be anything other than kind of proud of the way they played? Because you can pinpoint the deficiencies. Defensively, they're deficient. Still need players. And in midfield, you're still deficient because Beaton going off disrupted the flow, and then your players that are coming on aren't of the quality. So we can roadmap this defeat. We can see where it all went wrong. The manager can see that. Hopefully those upstairs can see that as well and listen to the manager and say, this is how I'm going to rectify this in January. Let me do what I do best, and that's manage a football club, and I'll get you results if you allow me to bring in the players to get you the results. As Jared said, he's 5 months ahead of where he probably should be in the rebuilding structure. So, let's take it to the nth degree. And, because you now look at that team and you think the league is very much there for the taking now.
Yeah. Yeah, Patrick Dolan on YouTube actually totally agrees with you. He's commented, again, game management is poor, lead in 3 away games in the group and pick up only 3 points from a possible 9. Don't have the necessary strength and depth. The board needs to back Ange now. Geez, I don't know what you've got, Tony, but it's catching.
It's the Ange cough. That's what she's both got. It's tribute to the manager.
It's the Ange cough, Jared. You're right.
We'll be calling each other mate next. I don't know. Jared, Tony made an interesting point there. If there's one thing we know about the manager, it's that he picks his words very carefully and he doesn't suffer fools gladly in any way. Do you think the comment that the substitutions were a big issue are part of the reason that led to the defeat? Do you think that is a deliberate tactic on his part to try and force the board's hand, or is he just speaking from the heart, do you think?
I wouldn't put it past him for it to be a subtle... He's about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the head, let's be honest. If you look at it and go, look at him after the Michelin one, people on the board or whatever aren't taking my point on, like, I'm not being forceful enough to get players, whatever the exact quote was. That was the same sort of context, in my opinion, as what that comment was, Laura. Like, it's exactly what it was. He's saying, hey, I've got players here. The subs didn't do it. So he's taken the hit himself, saying, I made subs, it didn't work, that's on me. But at the same time, there's that subtlety where it's a little jab to the ribs of the guys on the board or whoever's got the checkbook to say, you're going to have to let me sign some players because we've got in my opinion, our attack is good enough for Europe at the moment. We're scoring, as you guys have said, the defense needs work for it to be in Europe. And the analogy I keep seeing and keep thinking about and saying is there's an old baseball movie, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And just building it, now it's got to get the players to come. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Great movie quote. I'm always up for one of those, so I like that one. Tony, it's difficult sometimes if you're anything like me, sometimes the result can overshadow the positives of the game, but I do like to try and focus on some of those, and one of the absolute positives is we lost 3-2. We could have lost by a lot more if it wasn't for the man between the sticks. Joe Hart, I mean, I don't think there's an individual in the world who has changed my opinion of them so drastically for the positive as Joe Hart. What did you make of that performance last night and the impact he's having in general at the club?
It was superhuman, heroic, kind of it's an injustice to those words, really, isn't it? What Joe Hart did last night. I I likened it to it was Henrik Larsson-esque in the UEFA Cup final. He just didn't deserve to be in the losing side. Scoreline was the same, ironically. You know, but that double save was just incredible. The boy Adley thinks he's got a tap in. Adley believes he scored and can't believe that Joe Hart's come away with the ball.
Yeah.
I genuinely think Adley thought, all I need to do is touch this and it's in. And how Joe Hart saved it, I will never know. I mean, the reaction save with the foot was good enough, but the second one, I mean, just, excuse me, an incredible piece of goalkeeping. But again, are you surprised? Joe Hart's fallen in love with football again. I've mentioned it before. His commitment to the Celtic cause is just, it's 100% now. So he will burst every sinew to keep the ball out the net if he can. And if he can save the ball, he'll save it. Because I keep getting back to it as well, he's a bloody good goalkeeper. People don't realise that. He hasn't lost it overnight. He's a fantastic goalkeeper. And he showed last night exactly why all that big game experience came to the fore. And yeah, lost 2 late goals, fine. I get that. Lost the game, no worries. But you have to turn around and say sometimes, see up until he lost the 2 late goals, Joe Hart is bordering on a 10 out of 10 performance in the man-to-man ratings. He really is. That's to me, that would have been a 10 out of 10 performance if Celtic had won, because he was incredible. So, and he can't legislate for, the last 2 goals, but what he's brought stability, he's brought confidence, and he's also brought a reassurance to that Celtic defence, or at least for most part. Yep, like every goalkeeper, prone to the odd error, clanger, get that. But if he continues to make them when you're 4-1 up against Dundee, then I don't think MD will bat an eyelid about that. They'll just say, right, fine, okay. But last night he showed every bit of quality where you thought, Joe Hart should be playing at a higher level, let's be honest.
Yeah.
He should be. England, the teams in England just thought he'd lost it. He'd lost his mojo or whatever, and they made snap decisions on him. And it's to Celtic's credit that they gave him the opportunity. And it's also, Celtic's been great for Joe Hart, but Joe Hart's been great for Celtic as well, because he's wanted to show everybody that he can still keep the ball out the sticks. And I can't praise the guy highly enough. He was extraordinary last night, and that save, the double save in particular, will live long in the memory. The another one with his foot, where people said he didn't know too much about what happened, but goalkeepers keep the ball out the net by hook or by crook. And as I say, I get back to it, he was just so unlucky to end up on the losing side, and I felt for him so much because he gave everything last night.
Do you know, it's funny, you hear that feedback a lot about the goalkeeper didn't know much about it, especially if they just fire out a limb or whatever, but I always think that's a bit of an unfair criticism. These are guys who, yeah, I totally agree. Like, these are guys who have spent years honing that skill, honing the ability to the point where it becomes instinct. So you might think it looks involuntary, and the chances are it probably is. It's because it's ingrained in them. It's muscle memory.
Yeah, to keep the ball out the net, that's their job. So they will use everything and anything at their power and their disposal to do that. And as you say, if they do it from memory, fine. They see the white spherical object heading towards them. It doesn't matter how they keep it away, or if they can keep it out the net. And I think also in the Rangers game, McGregor had a double save as well, which defy belief. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but it was pretty good. So it's a goalkeeper's instinct. That's what they're there to do. And you can't be lucky if you do that. You just can't. It's down to the fact that you know what you're doing. You got a hat tip sometimes to great goalkeeping, and that last night was a sensational piece of goalkeeping. Yeah,
it 100% was. Jared, we spoke to you early in Ange's reign, and we spoke to Dan Orlowitz of the Japan Times, and if Tony's recollection is as mine was, it was squeaky bum time listening to both of you talking about Ange's attitude on defending and that kind of thing. But he seems to, with Joe Hart, have identified perhaps the biggest defensive weakness that we had at the time he came in, the goalkeeping position, identified it and rectified it, and like you said, had the foundations to build on. What have you made of Joe Hart coming in? What was your attitude about him before he came to the club, and how do you think his impact has helped Ange build what he's trying to build?
Well, I always thought Joe Hart was a good keeper. Like all his time at Man City, when he was at England, all that sort of stuff. I thought he was a good keeper. You don't lose that overnight. And it was just he wasn't Guardiola's sort of goalkeeper. So to then go to Torino, apparently he did well over there, and then he got hurt, and then he's just bounced around for a few years. So I was like, okay, does he still have it or not? It's a 50-50 now because he hasn't played at that level in a couple of seasons, like 3-4 years, whatever it was. So I was a 50-50 on it, but I'm like, he was exactly what we needed in terms of we needed a vocal leader for our relatively young backline. And you compare, he doesn't tick the boxes in the way Ange likes to play, like with keepers with good footwork, right? But he's making do. So I think whatever that magical coaching that Stevie Woods is doing with our goalkeepers, Joe Hart's gone on the Fraser Forster a couple of years ago where he'd come in, he hadn't done anything for a couple of years, and then had a blinder of a season for us when the season we beat Lazio. And now Joe Hart's getting that benefit with us. And all it takes is someone to commit to the club, feel like love, put an arm around him, feel loved, and feel like he's contributing. And look at the guy; he's almost back to his Man City levels.
Yeah, he's been absolutely fantastic. Callum on YouTube has commented, "This took me by surprise. Sorry, I'm late." Welcome, Callum, and anybody who is surprised by the fact we're here early. If you missed the start of the show, we're on at 10:30 today in honour of Bertie Auld, whose funeral mass takes place today at St Mary's in the Carlton. Just to avoid doing this in future, you can actually subscribe to the State of Mind YouTube channel. We're nearly at 16,000 subscribers, which is amazing. And you can actually press the little bell on there that gives you a notification when we go live. So even if you're not expecting us, or if we do a surprise bulletin, as we sometimes do at the weekends, if there's no football on, then you'll never miss another stream, and you can always catch up on them sort of afterwards as well. Moving on to next week, or the next week in football for us, we've got Aberdeen coming up at home on Sunday, a 3:00 kickoff there against us at Celtic Park. Tony, first of all, I'm wondering, we talked a little bit last night on the post-match press conference about the need to use the squad that we have because of the number of games that we've got coming up, even if the squad isn't of the standard we would like it to be yet. What are your thoughts on, will there be many changes, or do you see us going with the same team at the weekend that we had on Thursday night?
Well, I think part of the manager's remit and taking or making the substitutes was also mindful of the fact that he's got a game on Sunday to win. I mean, he's always forward planning, he's always methodical, does things for a reason. Jared can tell you that as well. So, yeah, I mean, I don't expect to see much change on Sunday. Probably, I would be inclined to start the same team, unless Beaton is out for a lengthy spell, but maybe Rogic could come back in if he's fit. I don't know what you said about Rogic, he's maybe still a wee bit away, you know, so all depends. But I don't envisage him making far too many changes, you know, because they've got league points to win, you know, so you can't be, you know, tinkering with the team at this stage in the season. But again, it's the threadbare nature of the squad, isn't it? When guys get injured, you know, we don't have adequate replacements, so it's all coming back in on itself, isn't it? Really, you know. But I think Ange knows more than capable. I mean, they were on a 9-match unbeaten run up until last night. There's no reason to suggest that they can't do that again. Domestically and in Europe, you know, or extend it. We just happened to be playing a class outfit last night. No disgrace to lose to Bayer Leverkusen, you know, but I'm sure Ange's got his eye further ahead, and, you know, right up until January the 2nd, to when they play Rangers, he'll want to keep grinding out the results and winning, especially in the league, because, as I said just a while ago, that he'll feel that it is there for the taking. So they have to be clinical and ruthless again. And, you know, if that means, you know, going to the same well and asking the same players to perform, then so be it. And I know it's unfair, but it's just the nature of the beast at Celtic. You have to win football matches, and you have to go to the well and keep drinking and peaking and peaking and peaking. And again, the same players are going to be asked the same questions. You know, they're going to have to dig deep again against Aberdeen. And yeah, I think the manager knows that. He has every sympathy with that. And that's why he's having these warning shots over the bow to say to the board, I need help. These players need help. So give me that help so I can give these guys a rest at some point during this hectic schedule that's coming up.
Yeah, it's certainly something to keep in mind. Jared, to expand the question a little bit, it's sometimes difficult to predict exactly what Ange will do in these situations. If you were him, what changes would you make? Would you make any changes? Would you stick with the same 11? How would you go into the game against Aberdeen on Sunday?
It all depends, as Tony said, on the Bitton situation.
Mhm.
Because realistically, looking at Aberdeen, their midfield's their strongest part. So you're not going to want to have McGregor, Turnbull, Rogic together in the middle of the park when you've got Bruni. What's the guy they got from Rangers? Can't remember his name. Just lost it off the top of my head. But then you've also got Ferguson in there. So they've got some guys who can play a bit who'll also leave a foot in if need be. So it's going to be physical in the middle. So as much as being an Aussie, and I want to see, you know, Rogic, the Don Scalper, as I call him, because of how well he plays against him, see him in there. I'd love to see that, but I just can't see it happening. So I thought Turnbull looked a little flat in the game against Leverkusen. Maybe he gets a break. Rogic comes in. That's probably the only change I would make. And if Starfelt's fit, him in for Welsh. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, it'll be the same lineup that we played with against Leverkusen.
It's an interesting point that Jared raises, Tony. I've made no secret of my admiration, love for David Turnbull over the seasons. He is a bit flat at the moment. He isn't having the impact that he could have. Do you think it's maybe a case of he's perhaps a player who needs a little bit of a rest? He's a possible one to leave on the bench. He'd certainly be a good option to bring off the bench if he was a bit fresher. Do you not think?
I think quite a lot of the Celtic players need a rest. You know, to be fair, but the manager and the players know that. You know, it was Alan Morrison that was on here. Was talking about rest and recuperation, wasn't it? When he was doing all the stats and stuff, and he was saying, was it 48 hours? The minimum time, you know. But a lot of these guys who have played a lot of football maybe need more, especially guys that have maybe went on long haul international trips like Kyogo and stuff like that. You know, I don't think for a minute that Kyogo doesn't need a rest either. But we're in a needs must situation. And regards the question about Turnbull, you know, but you always feel about Turnbull that he's capable of doing something. You know, and he will spring into life at any given minute. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. You know, and that's what frustrates you. Would benching him be the answer? Possibly. But guys like Turnbull want to play. You know, so you kind of run the risk of, you know, upsetting guys who, in their mind, probably think they're contributing a lot to the cause, where the supporters and the manager might see it differently. You know, again, that'll be Ange's call. But yeah, you look at Turnbull and you think, you know, you're hot and cold, you know, and and when you go off the boil, you aren't contributing, which is frustrating because he has an abundance of riches in his locker. You know, when they come out, and I know you value him very highly. I do as well. I think he's a technically gifted, fantastic footballer, but just too often this season we've not seen that.
Yeah.
So, you know, the manager might be tempted to rest him in the hope that he comes back, you know, rejuvenated, reinvigorated. But again, I get back to the threadbare nature of the squad makes it pretty impossible to do that with a tried and tested 11.
But we have to, Tony. Like, let's be honest, between our next Europa League game next Thursday, we've got Aberdeen, Hearts and Dundee United in the league.
Yeah.
We have to rotate in these 3 games. We have to. And there's no choice. There's no fact of the matter is we've got to we're lacking squad depth, but it has to happen.
I get that too, but see if they
Turnbull
drop points during in any of those games, then the fans will go mental, and then they'll say, "Why did they rotate?" So I get totally what you're saying. Players need to rest. I totally get that. But
now I'm looking at Turnbull going, okay, against Aberdeen, they're not. It's not going to be as fast a game, or I actually think the matchup will better suit if Turnbull gets rested against Aberdeen, so he can play against Hearts, because his game would suit the way Hearts plays and the way we need to attack them better, in my opinion, than Aberdeen. Like Aberdeen, our wingers will do most of the damage.
I'm not disputing any of that logic, Jared. I'm just disputing the fact that Ange will probably go with what he sees fit, what was a winning team. You know,
he's not going to kill us.
Exactly. And if he thinks that winning team who gone 9 games unbeaten, 6 in the league, 5 or 6 wins out, 5 wins out of 6, I think, in the league, or 6 out of 7. You know, I don't think he'll change much.
I think it's a bit like the old snooker analogy. You've got to think where you want the cue ball to be 3 or 4 shots ahead. But if you miss the pot before you get there, then you're screwed, basically. Ronnie Pickering, and I hope it's not the real Ronnie Pickering, but it might be, on YouTube, says Turnbull's fatigued, Celtic severely lacking quality and depth, which I think is everything comes back to that point of the lack of quality and depth, the need to back the manager in January. Jared, I wanted to take a little bit of a more in-depth look at the opposition, which it's clear that you've done already. Aberdeen are sitting 8th. They've only won 2 out of their last 5 matches, but things under Stephen Glass seem to maybe be turning a corner after a slightly difficult start for them. They have had a win against Hearts. They've had a draw against Rangers. Where do you think the threat comes from Aberdeen on Sunday? Do you see them being a big threat for us?
I think we should get the win, but I'm not expecting us to go there and pants them and beat them 5-0. I'm thinking it'll probably be, I said on our pod, maybe a 2-0 or a 3-1, because there's always that risk the way we play. But I really don't see, I think Ramirez, if he's fit, I'm not sure if he is or not. He's the main danger, because with the way they play, he's their main target man, and then they've got guys playing off him. But as I said before, the midfield battle is going to dictate how much service he gets and how much service our forwards get, and that's where the game's going to be won and lost, in the middle of the park.
I think that's going to be a vital area. Tony, where for you are the areas where we might struggle against Aberdeen, or where they might be particularly strong and give us a challenge?
I think obviously the midfield area is Aberdeen's strongest point. You know, we've already seen that, and they went to Ibrox and gave Rangers a game. Bruni even scored, you know, so you're up against that as well. But I don't know. I just fully expect Celtic to win against Aberdeen. You know, Aberdeen haven't been great this season. You know, but and a lot of people are saying that if Celtic don't score early, they struggle. You know, I don't know if I'm buying into that per se. You know, I just think that teams are playing against Celtic in a specific way because they don't want hammered. You know, and it's up to Celtic to break that down. And once they do break that down, then other teams run the risk of getting a hammer.
There's only 2 or 3 teams in the league, Tony, that will come out and play against us.
Yeah, you know that, and that's the thing. And I don't list Aberdeen as one of them. You know, so you know when you've got teams that are deliberately not coming out to play football, then so be it. You know, they are strong in the middle of the park. Up front, I'm not really too concerned about the threat that they've got, because I think Celtic can capably take care of it. You know, I'm always concerned about what Celtic do against any opposition, and I just feel that up until last night, momentum was very much with Celtic, but they played well last night, so I've no reason to believe that they can't score 2 or 3 against Aberdeen, like Jared says. You know, and also, you know, there's confidence surging through Celtic at the minute, especially domestically. So I'm always of the opinion that, you know, especially at home, Celtic are particularly good. You know, they might struggle, Aberdeen might camp in and sit in, but you have to find a way to combat that now. And I think that's what Celtic are finding the more and more the season goes on. teams aren't intent on playing them at football. St Johnstone did it last week at Hampden. Celtic got the job done in the end. And that's what it's all about now. Between now and January, get the job done. Doesn't matter how you do it. If you can win 3 or 4-0, then so be it. But just win. And then you play Rangers on the 2nd of January and see what happens. But I'm still pretty confident in this Celtic team, especially at home, to beat anybody.
Yeah, if the confidence is there, and like you said, teams who have come to play against us and play out against us have suffered the consequences, Dundee and St Mirren amongst them. With that point in mind, Jared, and as Tony touched on, and as you touched on as well, are you concerned that Aberdeen are going to park the bus like a Livingston, like a St Johnstone, and prove difficult for us to break down? Because we have struggled against teams like that already this season. Do you expect Aberdeen to do that, or has Stephen Glass got too much professional pride? Is he going to want to come and try and imprint his own game on us?
I did a bit of look back at the highlights and just a couple minutes here and there of how Aberdeen have been playing. The last 5 games, Kevin Graham put a post up before saying that they've beaten Hibs and Hearts and drew with Rangers in their last 5. So they've got some form going for them. But the way they're playing is it's like a box with their centre-backs and a couple of defensive midfielders sitting there. And then, so they're compact, but then they've got the wingers who get out and look to whip crosses in. So it's like keep it tight at the back and then play like a V-shape out to the corners to come back into Ramirez and the target man.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the way they're going to play, then I'm not worried because our centre-backs will be fine. We've got good enough wingers and that there. So it's a little combination the way they play with what you were saying, what the question was. So I don't think they're going to come and full park the bus like row of four, and then one back and striker up at halfway. I don't think we're going to see that. But the way they play, they do leave gaps where if we can get into the middle, win the midfield, that battle, then our wingers will be able to get in behind and they'll have all sorts of nightmares. So I think we're a good shout. We'll score goals. It's just at the other end, how much we can limit and cut down, the crosses they get into the box.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. The word swashbuckling comes to mind, I think, as always does with Ange. I love that when they're talking about football. It was a swashbuckling game. Not that anybody uses it in normal language, but Tony, I'm sure you've seen it and maybe used it in your time as a journalist.
Oh, I love a bit of swashbuckling when it comes to the old rip-roaring, free-scoring, never boring. You know that. So Ange's team are kind of the epitome of what I like to see from Celtic, So yeah, like a bit of swashbuckling, yep, definitely.
100%. Before we go back to focus on Celtic specifically, Tony, I wanted to get your thoughts on. Some would call him a hero, some might not, but he certainly is a massive servant of the club. Scott Brown will be returning to Celtic Park for the first time since his departure. It's tinged with a little bit of sadness in that he didn't get the send-off he perhaps deserved because of the situation in the world at the time that he left Celtic and the nature of the way the season went on the pitch. How do you see things going for him on his return, the reception that he might get? Do you think we could be... I know we've got the tributes to Bertie to focus on Sunday, and I'm sure Scott Brown's not the type to want to take away from that in any sense, but surely we've got to mark his return in some way and show him some sort of appreciation.
I think when Scott Brown left, they had that moniker captain, leader, legend. That stays, doesn't it? I don't think that Scott Brown will ever relinquish those titles in the eyes of the Celtic fans. He was a born winner. He achieved a lot. And to get the opportunity to say cheerio or whatever right in the right manner, he'll relish that. But it's like everything else. He'll be in the opposition. He'll be up against you. So I guess as long as Scott Brown doesn't do anything ridiculous like score at Parkhead like he did at Ibrox, then he'll get a wonderful reception. And if Celtic could put Aberdeen to the sword, everything will be tickety-boo and fine. But it's when he starts to wind people up and do what Scott Brown does, and then you'll look on and say, well, he did that for Celtic for the best part of a decade and more. So you know what you're getting with him. And I think he'll always be revered by the Celtic supporters. And as I say, I think the captain, leader, legend name and title spoke for itself. He was the beating heart of that team for so long. Like him or loathe him, he's the kind of player that when he was in your team, you loved him, and if he wasn't in your team, you loathed him or you hated him. Maybe that's too strong, but he was a divisive character, but he certainly never hid, and he achieved a lot at Celtic. People wonder why he never ever went elsewhere. He was happy and content, and he played against the best, and he won a lot in his career. So, personal happiness is a big thing for footballers, and he was handsomely rewarded, and he played on the biggest stage with one of European football's biggest clubs, and he was a wonderful servant. But as I say, as long as he doesn't do anything stupid on Sunday, he'll do something stupid. He always does. I mean, stupid as in correct. Stupid as in score a howitzer or something, But it'll be strange to see him at Celtic Park in an opposition jersey, because it's been so long since he actually did that. He was part and parcel of the fabric of the team that achieved so much. I wish him all the best, and I'd like to think that the Celtic supporters will be kind to him until the game starts, and then all bets are off, isn't it? And that's the way Bruni would like it. That's the way he would always want it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I can't decide with Scott Brown's personality whether he would absolutely celebrate out his head if he scored a goal just to wind us up for a laugh, or whether he would do the thing that's become modern parlance in football and kind of raise a hand but keep his head down. I can't decide.
Do you know what, Laura? I would actually love him to celebrate and go off his nut if he's because
I'd love him to do the Bruni.
It's in keeping with who he is. I'd prefer it to be a consolation goal, like 3 or 4-1, But would you grudge him doing it?
No. And I think it would be taken in the spirit he would intend it as well, I would think.
Of course, so football's all about scoring and high moments, and people want to strip the enjoyment out of football. And I get all that. It's a respect thing when you score against your former club, and I'm fully aware of that. But I just think sometimes, there's a difference between celebrating and doing an Adi Bayor and running 100 yards to really rile a set of supporters that used to adore you. There's a big difference. But if you score against your former club, it's part and parcel of football. It happens, but that's the best moment in football, isn't it? To score a goal. So celebrate it by whatever way you see fit.
Oh, 100%. It's I'm quite looking forward to it, because that was one aspect of his personality that I always loved. One of my abiding favourite memories as a Celtic supporter, full stop, is him scoring that goal against Rangers, where the Bruni was born, and standing in front of El Hadj Diouf, particularly because I was at one of the Celtic Rangers matches where El Hadj Diouf, I can't remember exactly what he did, but he was less than savoury towards the supporters, let's put it that way. And so he always had a particularly, put it this way, cross me and you won't be forgiven, especially if you're a Rangers player, and El Hadj Diouf did that. So, Jared, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Bruni returning. He's a player who, probably didn't have the best ability of any player that we've ever seen, probably wasn't to everybody's liking with the way that he played, but certainly brought a mentality, a steeliness, a sort of winning mentality to the team that even now we're probably missing. What do you make of him coming back, and what do you think will happen on Sunday with that?
My wife will say I have a bit of a man crush on Bruni, considering he's the first ever player in my whole life whose name and number I ever got on the back of a shirt.
Wow.
So that's how highly I rate the guy, because normally I'm like, players come and go. I don't want someone's name who's not there. He was the only one who I've done that for until last season, and then that bloke left. So, Bruni was the guy for me. So he comes back. I hope he gets the round of applause he deserves. I said before, if we win 3-1, that happens, and he scores a late goal, consolation goal, and he does the Bruni. If that happens, the next day, Twitter will be a cesspit. You're going to have people absolutely berating him for not respecting it. But then you'll have everyone else who's like, no, he's just taking the piss. So we'll have a bit of a laugh and we'll know it was all good natured and stuff. So I know once that whistle goes, he's going to kick lumps out of everyone. And I wouldn't expect anything else. He's the sort of guy you want in your team. And when he's on your team, he's winding you up. So, yeah. I wish him nothing but the best, except for when the actual game's on. Then I want him to have an absolute stinker.
Well, here's hoping. But David Kelly on YouTube, thanks for commenting, says, I think that Brown will get a great reception. He stayed a couple of seasons too long, but that wasn't his fault. And I think that's the thing is, I think Celtic supporters were perhaps angry more at the way his situation was handled than him as an individual. I think he could have provided us a lot of off-the-pitch stuff in his last couple of seasons, but as is the want with Celtic players, sometimes we kind of ran him into the ground with the amount that we played him, and it didn't do him any favours. But I'm looking forward to seeing him on Sunday and seeing what he brings, and it will be strange to be playing against him. We'll get a little bit of a taste of the feeling that every other team in the league has had for the past decade or so of I'm sure I'll be shouting at him at some point because I do have the ticket to the game, so I'm sure I'll be saying something about him, but it'll be an interesting one. We're going to end the show with a wee chat about Bertie, but before we do that, Tony, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Christmas advert. Now, it doesn't sound like the most serious topic, right? And it isn't. But I have to say, I've watched it back 3 or 4 times now. And yes, it's a silly bit of marketing. Yes, they're all wearing the gear that you're trying to sell in the shop and all that kind of stuff. It's the most cynical person in the world could look at it and say it's just a big marketing ploy. But I've got to say, after the couple of years that we've had, to be watching something where there was players that I love with in-jokes about them, with an ability to take the mick out of themselves, with a manager that I admire, it just filled my heart with a little bit of joy to be a Celtic fan. What did you make of it?
It just strikes a chord every year, doesn't it? Probably 2 things you look forward to, Celtic supporter that is, at Christmas. John Lewis ad and the Celtic ad, you know what I mean? It's kind of on your calendar, you sort of right, okay, when's it coming out, what's happening? And there's a great sense of fun with these Christmas ads in Celtic now. They really know how to tug at the heartstrings, and they also know how to have a laugh at themselves. And these adverts they showcase everything that's good about Celtic and the Celtic family, and being a player, a manager, or just involved and connected with the club as a supporter in some way. And it's meant to be light-hearted fun and a family time and a joyous time, and I don't think I think it ticks every box. The Celtic Christmas adverts, whether it be an emotional one or a happy one or a comedic one, they always seem to get that balance right. And I think you kind of people that run a book as to who'll be what particular character this year, and it's funny, it's just it is meant to be light-hearted and give the fans some cheer at the festive period, and they always do it right, and it's fair play to everybody that's involved and all sorts of production people behind it as well, and the marketing. Yeah, of course it's a marketing strategy and a play. We get all that, but that's fair enough. That you want to buy the Christmas jumpers, you buy it. It's up to you. It's a choice at the end of the day, isn't it? You want to buy Celtic merchandise, you go and buy it. But I applaud everybody for entering into it in the spirit that it's meant. And as you say, you couldn't fail but to laugh at people having a wee go. Self-deprecation. I'm a big fan of that. I do it a lot myself. So it's the way forward. And even Anne's getting involved as well. Probably thought, what's this all about? But just entered right into it. So good on them. And as you say, it's life isn't that serious all the time, is it?
It really isn't. It's felt a bit too serious over the past couple of years, but yeah, it's definitely nice to see something as light-hearted as that.
And I don't think there's a Celtic supporter out there who didn't enjoy that advert when it hit the social media platforms on midweek on Monday, whenever it was. So yeah, big up to everybody and a hand clap all round, because it's fun, and I think that's the way it's in the spirit's intended.
Yeah, the family group chat, I have to say, lit up when it came out with screenshots of various different bits of it,
Yeah.
and Juranovic doing the Salt Bay, and takes my brother a picture of Ange with a sack of presents over his shoulder and the Christmas jumper on, and his one reply was "Bad Santa," which I thought was hilarious. Jared, it's an interesting one. I've always wanted to get like somebody's opinion who lives in a slightly more tropical setting. Maybe it's not a tropical setting. Maybe I'm glamorizing Australia beyond belief. But like, how does something like that translate to you as somebody living out with Scotland? That it's all cozy and winter time and all that kind of stuff. When obviously it's the complete opposite to you. Can you still get into the spirit of it when you watch something like that?
I love those ads. Like, what, like, how many times you used to say you watched Laura like 4 or 5 times or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I reckon I've watched it at least probably 10 or 11 times. Unbelievable. It's the thing I love about it is it's the guys, they're not taking themselves too serious. And that's great. That's what we want at our club. We don't want a bunch of stuck-up footballers. Like, you can tell they're good humans if they're willing to do that and mock themselves or be self-depreciating or whatever. Like, the one I loved the most out of the whole ad was what's his name? Strachan with his laptop. Like, that's the way I popped. Like, I was like, yes, how good. That was the one that got me the first time. So yeah, but for what you said about the whole how do we get into it and everything with the weather and that, well, summer, we're going into summer. So like snow, the woolen jumpers. I said on our pod, thing I want to see from Ange going into Christmas is him wearing, because of that black jumper he manages in. I wanted to see him in the Christmas jumper. So yeah, Scott too. But I knew Ange would have a laugh because he's always had that dry Aussie sense of humor. So yeah, I enjoy it, but a lot of the stuff I'm like, I'd buy the jumpers and that, but what's the point? It's going to be like, I don't know, this time next week, it's going to be like 28, 29, 30 degrees, sunny. Why would I need one of those jumpers? So
Do you
we'll be in
hear
t-shirt
this,
and
Tony?
shorts for Christmas, and you guys will be in
Do you hear this
jacket.
humble brag?
Yeah, I heard that there, 29, 30, yeah. I'm sitting struggling, nursing the cold, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear that.
It's cold here today.
But what's cold in Australia? I don't even know,
It's 25, isn't it, Jared? Is that what it's cold? 25?
It's been 18 today. 18 today here in Melbourne, so that's cold.
Oh, better get the gloves out for 18 degrees, Tony.
Much of the year.
It's sometimes I question my life choices, Tony. I'll say that much.
We all.
Tony, I wanted to get your thoughts. You've given multiple tributes to Bertie at this point. I've done the same. We've listened to everybody on the pod over the week. What have you made of the coverage of Bertie's passing and the outpouring of love for him from everybody associated with the club? How's it affected you as somebody who did know him well as well?
I think it's been utterly wonderful, isn't it? You cannot speak highly enough of a man like Bertie Auld. As I've said before, he just straddled every generation of Celtic supporter. He had the common touch. He was just a man of the people, and not just the Celtic supporters, but any football supporter that he came in touch with, or who had the fortunate privilege to meet him. Have you ever known one man to have so many legendary stories, or people say so many wonderful, touching and heartfelt things about him? I don't. I really don't. He just and I said before, everybody had a Bertie story, and I flippantly said that Pope John Paul II played to 250,000 people in Bellahouston Park in 1982. Bertie Auld did more fans and followers than that, and I'm convinced he did, right? Because he could not walk down the street without speaking to somebody, and because that's just the way he was, and he had a wonderful presence, and I also said he just gave the gift of Celtic to everybody, whether they wanted it or not. Originally he told me, and I said that Billy McNeill was Mr. Celtic, but when Billy McNeill died, that kind of passed on to him, and yeah, Celtic lost somebody really, really special. And today will reflect that. They'll talk about all the stories again, and they'll have a laugh, and they'll celebrate a life that was lived. And as I say, everybody has a particularly fond memory of Bertie, whether that be off the field or on the field. You forget that. They don't forget. He played in the best Celtic team ever, bar none. And a team that that the players are now legends, every one of them. So and they will live on. You'll always live on because of that. Celtic did the great job. They've got Bertie Ault's name up beside the gold star. You see all the flags and the scarves, and that outpouring of emotion is just a measure of the esteem that a man like Bertie was held in. And he probably, he would be like, "What's all this about?" For me, it's nonsense. He would be like, "You don't want to be doing this." That's what he'd say outwardly. Probably inwardly, he'd absolutely love it.
I was going to say, if I knew anything about me, was that he was a humble man, but he would have enjoyed it as well. I'm sure.
He would have enjoyed it, and then he's probably the kind of guy to say, "You're right. I deserve this. I deserve this." That kind of thing.
Absolutely, is that true?
He'd be that humble. He'd say something like that, wouldn't he? And you know what? He does deserve it, because he's just a. I got my sadness out the road the night it happened. I was in my father's house, and I was pretty upset about it. And I wrote in the Celtic way, and I wrote a kind of a line that's, referring back to the '57 League Cup final, and when he was dropped for the final, and a reporter broke the news to him that Celtic had won 7-1, and typical Bertie said, "That's a tragedy. It's a marvellous tragedy." And I wrote a line saying that when the news came through, it was a tragedy, but there was no marvellousness attached to this one, and that's the way I still feel about it. It's tragic, but he will live long. He'll continue to live. He'll never die. He's kind of. I see him as kind of Celtic's eternal flame. A character like Bertie, I really do. Just an unforgettable fire. He was a force of nature, and just loved by everybody who came into contact with him. And see, to have that quality as a human being, it's, you turn around and you think, if you're half the man that Bertie was then, or half the person that Bertie was then, you're doing all right in life. I think, and he'll be well remembered today, and he'll get the send off that he does deserve. And I think, as much as there's real sadness about what today what means in the final kind of chapter in his life, I think there'll be some wonderful laughter as well, and that's the way he would have wanted it. I think that's the way Bertie would have wanted to be remembered. Remember the good times, remember the fun times, because he was just fun. He was a special, special person.
Yeah, he absolutely was. I hate to do this to you, Jared, having to follow on from Tony, but I wanted to get your thoughts, because obviously all the regular contributors to Acsom have spoken about Bertie this week, but what does it mean to you to lose somebody of Bertie's standing in the club's history, and what were your feelings when it happened?
I was devastated, upset, but at the same time, as Tony was just saying, he would have wanted us to celebrate him with a smile on his face, because he always had a smile on his face. I personally never met Bertie, so for me, I've got nothing on what Tony's got. The only Lisbon line I've actually been lucky enough to meet is Willie Wallace, because he lives over here. But at the same time, I think of Bertie, and when my grandfather passed, I was told everyone has two lives. There's the actual physical life, and then there's everyone who knows you. Your second life is them living their best life with your memory within them. So my grandfather passed away 2 years ago. I'm going to remember him the rest of my life, so he technically doesn't die off until everyone that knew him. Bertie won't have that. That's the way I look at it. He's a Lisbon Lion. He's a legend. That he's not going to ever die off. we're all here fleeting, but he will forever live on as a Celtic icon. And R.I.P. Birdie, condolences to his family and everyone who knew him. Because, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the guy was an absolute icon of the club. And every time I saw him, whether it's singing with Charlie and the Boys, or I've never heard the Celtic song sung by anyone more than once in my life, except for videos of Birdie. Like, I hear that song pre-game and I'm like, I hear it in Birdie. So the guy is going to live on forever.
Yeah, absolutely is. If you're interested in seeing, I think Celtic are streaming some of the funeral mass and some of the cortege and stuff like that past Celtic Park on their official YouTube channel. The mass starts at 12 o'clock, and then there will be various elements of it on the YouTube channel afterwards. So I would encourage you, if you're not heading down to St Mary's or to Celtic Park to pay your respects, to tune in and join other Celtic fans from across the world and paying your respects to a legend. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Jared, for joining me today. We'll be back on Sunday for the match coverage against Aberdeen, as always. And just a little parting word to Bertie, if he's listening. Rest in peace, pal. If you're waiting in the tunnel at the pearly gates, I hope you're singing. Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you on Sunday.